Ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed of my wedding day. The dress, the flowers, the laughter echoing under a canopy of stars. Now at 18, that dream was becoming a reality. I was engaged to the love of my life, Jake, a kind-hearted 19-year-old with eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. We set our wedding date for the middle of October, hoping to capture the golden hues of autumn in our celebration. Planning a wedding is no small feat, especially when both families are vast and sprawling like ours. To put it into perspective, my mother is one of 8 siblings. Each of her 7 brothers and sisters has their own bustling household, filled with children of all ages. Family gatherings are less like intimate dinners and more like mini-festivals, complete with a cacophony of laughter, debates over who makes the best potato salad, and the occasional friendly soccer match that inevitably ends with someone falling into the pool. Jake's family isn't much smaller. His parents each have several siblings, and family reunions often require rented halls to accommodate everyone. We wanted our wedding to be intimate, something that felt personal and heartfelt, so we decided on a smaller-scale event inviting close friends and immediate family. But small is a relative term when your immediate family could populate a small village. The guest list quickly ballooned, and we found ourselves grappling with the logistics of seating arrangements, catering numbers, and the ever-sensitive issue of who sits next to whom to avoid reigniting decade-old feuds over borrowed lawnmowers and forgotten birthdays. Budget constraints added another layer of complexity. We were young and just starting out in life. Jake was apprenticing as a mechanic, and I was taking night classes in fashion design while working part-time at a local boutique. Every penny counted. We scrimped and saved, cutting corners where we could without sacrificing the essence of what we wanted our day to be, a celebration of love surrounded by those who mattered most. One of the biggest expenses looming over us was the wedding dress. As someone passionate about fashion, I felt torn between the allure of a brand new gown and the practicality of our budget. One evening, as I sketched dress designs at our kitchen table cluttered with fabric swatches and invitation samples, I had an idea. What if I redesigned or upcycled an existing dress? It would not only save money but also allow me to infuse my personal touch into something deeply meaningful. I shared this idea with my mother over a cup of chamomile tea, the steam curling between us like whispered secrets. She looked at me thoughtfully, her eyes crinkling at the corners the way they always did when she was about to impart wisdom. "Your grandmother used to say that old things carry the stories of those who held them before," she mused. "Maybe you can find a dress with a story waiting to be continued." Inspired, I began exploring options, thrift stores, vintage boutiques, even contemplating sewing a dress from scratch. Word must have spread through the family grapevine because a few days later, I received an unexpected message from my cousin Megan. Megan, at 40, was one of the eldest cousins on my mother's side, a side of the family known for its strong-willed women and intricate dynamics. She and I hadn't been particularly close. The 22-year age gap and our vastly different life experiences saw to that. She was my mom's oldest sister's daughter, making her both my cousin and, in some ways, a figure who straddled the line between peer and elder. Her message was brief. "Heard you're looking for a wedding dress. I have mine if you're interested." I stared at the screen, surprised. Memories of Megan were few and far between, a fleeting presence at family reunions, her laughter ringing from the periphery, always a bit detached from the core hub of activity. I vaguely recalled her wedding back in 2015, a grand affair that was the talk of the family for months. The marriage, however, was short-lived. Her husband, whose name I struggled to remember, had been a distant figure, rarely attending family functions. Rumors whispered of control issues and unhappiness, but nothing was ever confirmed. "Curiosity piqued," I replied, expressing my gratitude and arranging a time to meet. The following Saturday, I found myself driving to Megan's house, a quaint cottage nestled at the edge of town, surrounded by towering oak trees whose leaves were just beginning to turn shades of amber and crimson. Butterflies fluttered in my stomach as I knocked on her door, unsure of what to expect. Megan opened the door with a warm, albeit reserved, smile. Her auburn hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her green eyes held a hint of melancholy that seemed to deepen as she led me inside. The house was cozy but minimalist, decorated with abstract art and shelves filled with books on philosophy and travel. It was clear that she valued experiences over possessions. "Thank you for considering this," she said, gesturing for me to sit on a plush armchair near the fireplace. "I heard about your wedding and thought this might help." She brought out the dress, carefully unwrapping it from layers of protective cloth. As the fabric unfurled, I gasped. It was exquisite, a vision of ivory satin with delicate lace appliques, a full skirt that seemed to flow like a river, and sleeves adorned with intricate beadwork. It was timeless yet held a vintage charm. "It's beautiful," I whispered, running my fingers gently over the lace. "Are you sure you want to part with it?" Megan shrugged, her gaze distant. "It doesn't hold any sentimental value for me anymore. It might as well bring joy to someone else." I hesitated. I was thinking of making some alterations to fit the theme of our wedding. Would that be okay? She met my eyes, a flicker of something unreadable passing over her features. "It's yours now. Do with it what you will." Relief washed over me, and I thanked her profusely. As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface of her composed demeanor, a story untold, perhaps wounds unhealed. Back home, I laid the dress out in my small sewing room, the afternoon sunlight casting a golden glow over the fabric. Ideas swirled in my mind. Our wedding was to be outdoors, set in a meadow surrounded by wildflowers and the gentle hum of nature. The grandeur of the dress, while stunning, didn't quite align with the intimate, earthy vibe we envisioned. I decided to make some modest alterations, shortening the hem to a T-length so it wouldn't drag in the damp grass, removing the sleeves to create a sleeveless bodice that allowed for more movement, and simplifying some of the embellishments for a more understated elegance. As I worked, I felt a connection forming, not just to the dress but to the history it carried. Each stitch was a blend of the past and the future, weaving together stories of love, loss, and new beginnings. I imagined the dress's journey, from the hopes and dreams Megan might have once held to the fresh start Jake and I were embarking upon. Weeks passed, and the dress transformed. My mother and friends were thrilled with the result, their praises boosting my confidence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a rosy hue across the sky, my mother suggested taking a photo to commemorate the moment. "You look radiant," she said, snapping a picture as I twirled, the skirt swaying gracefully around me. "Maybe we should send this to Megan," she suggested. "A way to show our appreciation." I hesitated for a moment, recalling the enigmatic expression she'd worn when I last saw her. But dismissing my doubts, I agreed. "Sure, let's send it with a thank you note." My mother composed a heartfelt message and attached the photo, hitting send with a satisfied smile. We settled into the evening, unaware of the storm brewing on the other side of that message. Later that night, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Megan's name flashed on the screen. Expecting perhaps a polite acknowledgement, I answered cheerfully. "Hello, Megan. Did you get the picture?" Silence hung heavy for a moment before her voice, cold and clipped, sliced through the air. "I saw it," she said flatly. "I can't believe what you've done." Taken aback, I stammered, "I'm sorry. Is something wrong?" "You should have asked me before you decided to ruin my dress," she snapped, her words laced with bitterness. Confusion and hurt welled up inside me. "I thought you said I could make alterations." "I didn't realize." "Alterations? You've butchered it. If you thought it was so ugly, you should have gotten your own dress." Her accusation hit me like a physical blow. "Megan, I never said it was ugly. I loved it. I just needed to make some changes to fit our wedding," she scoffed. "It's too different now. I could never wear it again." A mix of frustration and sorrow bubbled within me. "I asked if you wanted it back, and you said you didn't. You said it didn't hold any sentimental value." "Well, I didn't expect you to slut it up," she hissed. Heat rose to my cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "That was never my intention. I respected the dress and its history." "Clearly, you have no respect," she retorted before abruptly hanging up. I stood there, the dial tone echoing in my ear, disbelief washing over me. What had just happened? My mother, noticing my pale face, approached with concern. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" I relayed the conversation, my voice quavering. She said I ruined her dress and that I should have asked her permission. My mother's brow furrowed. "But she gave it to you. And she knew you planned to alter it." "That's what I thought," I murmured, sinking into a chair. Over the next few days, the situation escalated. Megan began spreading hurtful rumors within the family, telling anyone who would listen that I had slutted out her wedding dress and was trying to outshine her original wedding. Her mother called mine, berating me as a spoiled brat who took advantage of Megan's kindness. Family gatherings became tense minefields. Whispers followed me at my cousin's birthday party, and some relatives began giving me disapproving glances. The joyful anticipation of my wedding was tainted by the weight of unjust judgment. One evening, seeking solace, I visited my grandmother, a wise woman with a gentle soul and a knack for seeing through to the heart of matters. We sat on her porch, the scent of her rose garden enveloping us as twilight painted the sky. "Tell me what's troubling you, dear," she said softly. I poured out the whole story, tears finally spilling over. "I don't understand why she's doing this. I never meant any harm." Grandmother listened attentively, her eyes reflecting compassion. When I finished, she reached over and clasped my hand. "Megan has been carrying burdens you know nothing about," she began. "Her marriage was a painful chapter, one she hasn't fully healed from. Giving you the dress might have stirred emotions she wasn't prepared to face." I sighed. "But she said she didn't care about it anymore." Sometimes we tell ourselves we're ready to let go, but when confronted with reality, old wounds resurface. I contemplated her words. "So what should I do? Should I find another dress?" She shook her head gently. "This is your wedding, your moment to shine. You've done nothing wrong. Reach out to her once more if you feel it's right, but don't let her pain overshadow your joy." Taking her advice to heart, I decided to write Megan a heartfelt letter, expressing my gratitude and apologizing for any unintended hurt. I explained my perspective, hoping to bridge the growing chasm between us. Days passed with no response. Then, one afternoon, Jake approached me, a troubled look on his face. "What's wrong?" I asked, sensing his unease. He hesitated before saying, "Megan contacted me." Surprise flickered through me. "What did she say?" He took a deep breath. "She expressed concerns about your dress, implying that you weren't taking the wedding seriously. She even questioned whether I was sure about marrying you." My heart sank. "Why would she do that?" He wrapped an arm around me. "Don't worry. I told her that the effort you've put into the dress shows how much this means to you. I also made it clear that her comments were out of line." A mixture of gratitude and frustration welled up. "Thank you for standing up for me. I just don't understand why she's attacking us like this." "It's not about the dress anymore," he said thoughtfully. "It seems like she's projecting her own issues onto you." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with messages, this time from other family members. Some cousins expressed doubts about attending the wedding, having heard rumors that it was a cheap, shotgun wedding and that Jake was only after our family's money. I felt a surge of indignation. This has gone too far. Jake squeezed my hand. "We can't control what others say or believe. All we can do is focus on us." Determined not to let negativity overshadow our happiness, I made the difficult decision to uninvite Megan. I called her, steeling myself for the confrontation. "Megan," I began when she answered. "I think it's best if you don't attend the wedding." A bitter laugh echoed on the other end. "As if I wanted to witness your farce of a marriage." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry things have turned out this way. I wish you healing and peace." She scoffed. "Save your pity. You'll need it when he leaves you." The line went dead, and I sat there, a mixture of sadness and relief washing over me. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I focused on surrounding myself with positivity. Friends and family who supported us rallied around, helping with preparations and offering words of encouragement. My mother reached out to relatives who had been swayed by Meghan's rumors, clarifying misunderstandings and reaffirming the truth. The day of the wedding arrived, bathed in the golden glow of October sunlight. As I slipped into my dress, now imbued with layers of meaning and effort, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The mirror reflected not just a bride but a woman who had navigated challenges with grace. The ceremony was held in the meadow we'd chosen, wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. As I walked down the aisle, I caught sight of Jake waiting for me, his eyes filled with love and certainty. My earlier sneeze, a product of the lingering pollen, broke the tension, eliciting warm laughter from our guests and lightening the atmosphere. The reception that followed was a tapestry of heartfelt speeches, laughter, and joyous dancing under a canopy of stars. My aunt, Meghan's mother, approached the podium at one point, her demeanor composed yet carrying an undercurrent I couldn't quite place. From the moment I stepped off the plane, the crisp autumn air filled my lungs, and a surge of excitement coursed through me. Moving halfway across the world from West Bengal to pursue my studies was a monumental step, but little did I know how profoundly it would reshape my life. The city was alive with energy, a tapestry of cultures woven together by the threads of ambition and dreams. I met Mark on a brisk November afternoon at the boutique where I worked part-time between my classes. He walked in, a confident yet approachable aura about him, searching for a gift for his sister. His tousled brown hair and warm smile caught my attention immediately. As I helped him pick out a delicate silk scarf, our conversation flowed effortlessly from fashion to travel to our favorite books. By the time he left, he'd not only purchased the scarf but also secured my number under the guise of needing fashion advice in the future. Our first date was at a cozy cafe nestled in a quiet corner of the city. Over steaming cups of chai and shared laughter, I learned that he was 28, worked in finance, and had a tight-knit circle of friends he considered family. I was 22, navigating the challenges of a new country, culture, and the pressures of academia. Despite the age gap, our connection felt natural, as if we'd known each other in another lifetime. As weeks turned into months, our relationship blossomed. Mark introduced me to his circle, a group of friends who had been inseparable since college. There was Dave, the charismatic jokester, his wife Ellie, an elegant woman known for her culinary prowess, Sarah and Tom, the adventurous duo always planning their next trip, and a few others who floated in and out of gatherings. Their bond was palpable, a well-established dynamic that sometimes made me feel like an outsider peering in through a window. Ellie was particularly intriguing. With her polished demeanor and effortless grace, she hosted most of the group's social events. Her dinner parties were legendary, meticulously planned evenings with gourmet dishes that could rival any five-star restaurant. I admired her, hoping to one day emulate her confidence and sophistication. However, beneath the surface of our cordial interactions, I sensed a subtle undercurrent. Ellie often dismissed my attempts to contribute to conversations, her polite smiles not quite reaching her eyes. I chalked it up to cultural differences and my own insecurities. After all, I was the newcomer, the youngest in the group, and perhaps she simply needed time to warm up to me. One chilly evening, as leaves painted the streets in hues of gold and crimson, Mark and I prepared to attend another of Ellie's renowned dinners. As I applied a final touch of lipstick, I turned to him. "Do you think I should bring something this time? Maybe a dessert or a bottle of wine?" He glanced up from his phone, hesitating for a moment. "You know how Ellie is, she usually has everything covered. But if you want, we can ask." I nodded, sending a quick message to Ellie and Dave. To my surprise, Ellie responded promptly, "Absolutely. We'd love for you to bring one of those sweet dishes you make for Mark." A thrill of excitement surged through me. Cooking had always been my way of connecting with home, a tangible link to my heritage. Though I wasn't as skilled as my mother, I'd spent countless hours replicating her recipes, the familiar aromas filling my small apartment and wrapping me in comfort. "I can't believe she asked me to bring something," I beamed at Mark. He smiled softly. "See? You're becoming part of the group." Determined to make a good impression, I decided to prepare rosagala, a classic Bengali sweet that's both delicate and deceptively simple. The spongy cheese balls soaked in sugar syrup had been my favorite since childhood. I called my mother, spending over an hour on the phone as she walked me through the nuances of the recipe. Remember, she advised, the key is in the consistency of the china. Too hard and it won't absorb the syrup. Too soft and it will fall apart. I spent the next 3 days perfecting the dish. My kitchen transformed into a makeshift culinary lab, with pots bubbling and the scent of cardamom lingering in the air. I tested batches on my friends, their enthusiastic feedback bolstering my confidence. On the day of the dinner, I carefully arranged the rosagallas in a beautiful glass dish, garnishing them with a sprinkle of crushed pistachios for color. As we arrived at Ellie and Dave's elegant townhouse, I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. Ellie greeted us at the door, her designer dress and impeccable makeup making me acutely aware of my own simple attire. "Welcome. Oh, you brought the dessert. Let me take that to the kitchen." She whisked the dish away before I could offer any details. The evening unfolded smoothly. Laughter echoed through the candlelit dining room, glasses clinked, and the aroma of Ellie's gourmet cooking filled the air. Yet I couldn't shake a nagging feeling that something was amiss. After the main courses were cleared, Ellie emerged from the kitchen carrying an array of desserts. My heart swelled with pride as she placed my rosagalla at the center of the table. "Everyone, our resident chef has graced us with a special Indian sweet tonight," Ellie announced, a peculiar smile playing on her lips. As plates were passed around, Mark leaned in and whispered, "They look amazing." I watched eagerly as our friends took their first bites. Almost immediately, a flash of confusion crossed their faces. I reached for my own plate, bringing a piece to my lips. A burst of cinnamon overwhelmed my senses, drowning out the delicate flavor I had so carefully crafted. Cinnamon? That wasn't right. I glanced at the dish, noticing a dusting of brown powder atop each rosagalla. My stomach tightened. This wasn't how I had prepared them. Trying to mask my distress, I caught Mark's eye. "Did you see this?" I whispered, pointing subtly at the dessert. He shifted uncomfortably. Ellie thought they looked a bit plain, so she added some cinnamon for color. I felt a rush of emotions, confusion, embarrassment, a flicker of anger. "But you don't put cinnamon on rosagalla," I murmured. "Hey, it's not a big deal," he replied, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. "Everyone seems to like it." But they didn't. The polite compliments felt forced, and I couldn't help but feel that my contribution had been tarnished. The hours I'd spent perfecting the recipe, the connection to my culture, the effort to share a piece of myself, it all felt undermined. Excusing myself from the table, I stepped onto the patio, the cool night air a stark contrast to the warmth inside. Tears blurred my vision as I stared out at the city lights. Mark found me a few minutes later. "Are you okay?" I wiped my eyes quickly. "I just needed some fresh air." He sighed. "Look, I know you're upset, but Ellie was just trying to help. She thought adding cinnamon would make it more visually appealing. She altered my dish without asking," I replied softly. "It's more than just cinnamon. It's disrespectful." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his sign of frustration. "You're overreacting. It's just a dessert. Besides, the group already thinks you're a bit sensitive. Let's not make a scene." His words hit me like a slap. "Sensitive? Is that what you think too? Come on, don't twist this," he said, his tone edging on impatience. "I just mean that they're older, more experienced. They see you as younger." "A child," I finished for him, the weight of realization settling in. "Do you see me that way?" He hesitated, avoiding my gaze. "No, but sometimes you need to pick your battles." Silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant sounds of the city. Finally, he reached for my hand. "Let's go back inside. We'll talk about this later." I pulled away. "I think I'd like to go home." He sighed again. "Fine. I'll call a cab." The ride home was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions I couldn't untangle. Back in my apartment, the loneliness pressed in. I wanted to call my mother, but the time difference made it impractical. Instead, I curled up on the couch, the glow of the city outside casting long shadows across the room. The next morning, a text from Mark awaited me. "I'm sorry about last night. Your reaction made me feel like an awful person." I stared at the message, a mixture of frustration and disappointment swirling within me. He felt like an awful person because of my reaction, not because of what had happened. I typed back, "We need to talk." A reply came hours later, agreed. "Can we meet tonight?" As the day wore on, doubt gnawed at me. Was I overreacting? Was this simply a cultural misunderstanding? I reached out to my best friend, AITA, who had also moved here for studies. "You're not overreacting," she affirmed after I recounted the events. "She disrespected your dish and your culture. And Mark should have stood up for you." Her words provided some solace, but also highlighted the growing chasm between Mark and me. That evening, I arrived at Mark's apartment, a modest space adorned with modern art and sleek furniture. He greeted me with a tentative smile. "Hey," I nodded, taking a seat on the edge of the couch. "I want to understand what happened." He sat across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Ellie didn't mean any harm. She thought the dessert looked a bit plain and wanted to help. Why didn't she ask me first?" He shrugged. "Maybe she didn't want to bother you. Look, Ellie hosts these dinners all the time. She's particular about presentation." I shook my head. "It's not about presentation. It's about respect. She altered something I made without permission. And you knew. You could have stopped her." His expression hardened slightly. "I didn't think it was a big deal. You're making this into something it's not." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Do you realize how important that dish is to me? It's a part of my culture, my family. I spent days preparing it." He sighed, exasperation creeping into his voice. "You're taking this too personally. Not everything is about cultural significance." I felt a surge of anger. "Maybe not to you, but to me it is. And your friends already think I'm some naive girl who doesn't belong." "That's not true," he protested. "They like you. They just don't always understand you. Because they don't try," I countered. "And neither do you." An uncomfortable silence enveloped the room. Finally, he spoke, his tone resigned. "I think we need some space." I blinked, taken aback. "What are you saying?" "Maybe we rushed into this. The age difference, the cultural differences, maybe it's too much." I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. "So, you're ending things because I stood up for myself?" He looked away. "I just think we need time apart." I stood, gathering my belongings. "Fine. Take all the time you need." As I walked out of his apartment, a mix of relief and sorrow washed over me. The streets were alive with activity, couples strolling hand in hand, laughter spilling from nearby cafes. Yet I felt detached, like a spectator watching life unfold from a distance. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on my studies and reconnect with friends. AITA was a constant support, her presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone. Still, the nagging feeling of injustice lingered. One afternoon, as I scrolled through social media, a message popped up from an unknown number. "Is this the girl who overreacted about a dessert?" Confused, I replied, "Who is this?" "Just someone who thinks you should learn your place." Shock and anger coursed through me. Had Mark or his friends been spreading rumors about me? I decided to check the online forums I frequented. To my dismay, I discovered that Ellie had found my earlier post venting about the dinner incident. Though I'd used fake names, the details were specific enough for those involved to recognize themselves. A flood of comments ensued, some supportive, others harshly critical. The situation had spiraled beyond my control. My phone buzzed relentlessly, calls and messages from Mark, from unknown numbers, even from Dave. Feeling overwhelmed, I called AITA. "I need to get away," I told her, my voice trembling. Pack a bag, she replied without hesitation. We're going to my cousin's place by the lake. The next few days were a blur of serene landscapes and heartfelt conversations. Away from the city's chaos, I began to process everything that had happened. Do you regret posting about it? Aisha asked one evening as we sat by the water's edge. I pondered her question. I regret that it caused more trouble. But I don't regret expressing how I felt. She nodded thoughtfully. You have every right to stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Returning to the city, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I decided to focus on myself, my studies, my passions, my well-being. One morning, I received an unexpected email from Ellie. It was brief. We need to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe away from our usual haunts. Ellie arrived, her demeanor uncharacteristically subdued. Thank you for meeting me, she began. I nodded cautiously. What did you want to discuss? She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. I've been reflecting on what happened. I realize now that I overstepped boundaries. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. Why did you alter my dish without asking? She looked down, fiddling with her coffee cup. Kiss. I wanted to assert some control. Hosting these dinners is my thing, and maybe I felt threatened. Threatened? By me? I asked, incredulous. She met my gaze. You're young, talented, and bring a different energy to the group. I suppose I was insecure. I sat back, absorbing her admission. It wasn't just about the dessert, Ellie. It was about respect. I know, she sighed. And I'm sorry. I've been unfair to you. I considered her apology. Thank you for saying that. But it's not just between us. Mark didn't support me. He dismissed my feelings. She nodded. I can't speak for him, but I hope you find a way to resolve things. I left the cafe feeling a mixture of closure and lingering sadness. Ellie's apology was a step forward, but the damage with Mark felt irreparable. Weeks turned into months. I threw myself into my studies, earning top marks and securing an internship at a renowned fashion house. My designs began to reflect my journey, a fusion of Eastern and Western influences, bold colors intertwined with delicate patterns. One day, as I prepared for a showcase event, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, Mark's. I've been doing a lot of thinking, it read. I'm sorry for not standing by you. I realize now how much I let you down. If you're willing, I'd like to meet and talk. I folded the letter thoughtfully. Time had given me perspective. While I appreciated his reaching out, I wasn't sure I wanted to reopen that chapter. That evening, I sat with Aisha, the city lights twinkling below us from her rooftop terrace. Are you going to meet him? She asked. I sighed. I don't know. Part of me feels like I've moved on. Another part wonders if closure would be good. She placed a hand on mine. Whatever you decide, make sure it's what's best for you. In the end, I chose to meet Mark. We agreed on a public park, the autumn leaves mirroring the season when we first met. He looked much the same, yet there was a hesitance in his demeanor. Thank you for coming, he began. I nodded, waiting. I've realized how unfair I was to you. I didn't appreciate your perspective or support you when you needed me. I felt dismissed, I replied softly. Like my feelings didn't matter. He winced. I was blind to a lot of things. My friends, that circle, we've become insulated, maybe even arrogant. Meeting you challenged that, and I didn't handle it well. I appreciated his honesty, but remained guarded. I needed you to stand by me, to understand me. I know, he said, regret evident in his eyes. I can't change the past, but I hope we can find a way forward. I took a deep breath. I forgive you, but I think we've grown apart. I found strength in myself that I didn't know I had. I need to continue on this path. He nodded slowly. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. We parted on amicable terms, a sense of closure settling in. As winter gave way to spring, I flourished. My designs gained recognition, and I formed a close-knit group of friends who shared my interests and values. Aisha and I often reflected on how far we'd come, two girls navigating a new world, finding our voices. One evening, as we attended an art exhibition, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning, I saw Ellie, a genuine smile on her face. "Your work is stunning," she praised, gesturing to one of my pieces on display. "Thank you," I replied warmly. She hesitated before adding, "I'm hosting a cultural fusion dinner next month. I'd love for you to attend, and perhaps contribute one of your dishes, exactly as you prepare it." I considered her invitation. "I'd like that." The event was a vibrant celebration of diversity. People from various backgrounds shared their traditions, stories, and, of course, food. I brought my rosagala, prepared with care and presented just as I intended. As guests savored the sweets, Ellie raised a toast to embracing new perspectives and the beauty that comes from understanding one another. Our eyes met, and in that moment I felt a sense of reconciliation, not just with her but with the experiences that had shaped me. Life is a journey of growth, filled with challenges that test our resolve and shape our character. Through adversity, I discovered resilience and the importance of staying true to oneself. While not every relationship can withstand the trials we face, each teaches us valuable lessons. Standing amidst newfound friends and allies, I realized that I had found my place, a community where respect, understanding, and mutual support thrived. And as I looked ahead, the future gleamed with promise, a tapestry of endless possibilities woven with threads of courage and hope.